I'm gonna mute myself.
Good. And then I'm gonna mute the sound. I get to be a TV producer today.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have towards the end, we'll try to do a Q&A. If that's okay with you, Herbert.
Yep.
Yeah, I know you like questions, right? You ain't no short.
And
by the way,
three,
you know, yeah.
2, 1, let's go.
All right, good morning. Good morning. Greetings from the West Coast. If you're on the West Coast, greetings to you. If you're on the East Coast, then hey, good afternoon to you, or might be close to afternoon. But this is the Notary War Room Show. And like you always know, we keep it as simple as possible. We try to give you the information that you're going to need so that the notary public, entrepreneur, the business owner, the creator, the innovator inside of you can get some information so that you can navigate the world perfectly without hitting on the minefield, so you can avoid those traps. So this morning, we are honored and we're privileged to have our esteemed guest, Mr. Herbert T. Patty, who is the owner of his own law firm. He hails from Georgia, got his undergraduate degree from the Georgia Institute of Technology, and he is a graduate of the Santa Clara Law School, the distinguished Santa Clara Law School, which is an interesting thing because, you know, that positions you right in the middle of Silicon Valley. So I definitely want to say thank you for joining us on the Notary War Room. And my name is Tech Amaku, Etikama Jeremiah Amaku, but you guys know me as Tech, Dr. Tech Music. And welcome to the show. Thank you, appreciate it. And then I want to definitely give you a chance to introduce yourself to the family.
All right. Well, Jeremiah Tech, you know, I appreciate the invitation. You know, glad to be here again. You know, I guess my business name is Herbert Patty, but I feel like I'm amongst family. So you guys can refer to me as Teddy. That's what most of my family and friends refer to me as. Yep, I'm from Georgia. Went to Georgia Tech, moved out to the West Coast. I kind of started my career, and I've been here in California for about 19 years, kind of right here in Silicon Valley. So in terms of my experiences, I worked in-house in terms of a large corporation. I kind of still work there, a different company now. I have my own law practice. I'm also an entrepreneur as well. So I feel that, you know, in terms of on the law side, I typically advise clients and entrepreneurs in terms of, you know, what steps they should take in terms of protecting their own intellectual property. But at the same time, I'm also an entrepreneur myself. I get inspired by my clients, and so we're kind of, you know, we're pretty much in the same state in regards to that as well. So you know, family, wife, we met in here at law school. She's from North Carolina. Ain't too many melanated people at Santa Clara Law School, so we kind of linked up her first year, and you know, we have 3 kids here in the South Bay. So pleasure to be here and kind of look forward to this to the discussion of intellectual property, business, etc.
So you heard it there first. He's a husband, he's a father, and he's an entrepreneur. So just to give you a little bit of context, you know, you're speaking to the people who are in the audience, right? The people who are in the audience. And first of all, this is a notary public. It's originated as a notary public room, notary public space. And me personally, I love what's being created here, what's being built. I've never seen anything like this. Have you seen anything quite like this before?
I have not. This is all new to me. So, you know, I'm excited to be here, you know.
So which brings up the point of, you know, we are in Silicon Valley, which the 2 of us, we're fortunate enough to be in Silicon Valley, the capital of innovation. Right. The capital of creativity. Right. Even though that's expanding around in different parts of the globe now, but this area is known for that. For Apple headquarters, you know, Google headquarters, Facebook headquarters, you know, in the Xerox, you know, you want to HP, paper, the list goes on and on and on. And so just that in and of itself kind of breeds a specific type of person. But the room that you're speaking to right now is course creators.
Okay.
Notary public professionals. Okay. Book authors. Okay. Digital content creators, things like that. So the people who are in this room, these are people who are the creative types. Why, in an attempt to build their business, and they're entrepreneurs, by the way, too, as well, and as they move forward, whether it's the beginning, whether they've been years in, why, in your opinion, would having access to an intellectual property attorney, or at least being aware of what is out there, why is intellectual property, why would that be relevant to somebody who comes from that type of cloth?
Right. But Tech, I mean, simply put, I mean, you know, we're all inspired. And part of the inspiration, again, I won't get into anything spiritual today. But
go ahead, go right ahead. If you feel it,
I can do it. Okay. Well, you know, God inspires us, right? And part of that inspiration is creativity, right? It's known, you know, that download you get from above, it's going to happen several times per year. A few good ones, right? But some folks, they're very prolific and they just have a knack for things that are creative. They can just come up with really witty ideas. It's like a gift. But for everyone else, you'll get a few per year. And if you are inspired with this creativity and you act upon it, you got to protect it. And you know, I'm very fortunate to be living in this time, because I'm not going to age myself, but I remember there was a time where we were inspired. We did act upon things as a community, and we just didn't really have access to the information in terms of how we protect it. And then we bring something forth to the world, right, that changes the world, causes a shift, and other people monopolize it, and they take it from us, and they make more money than we did. And God gave us the gift. And so I'm fortunate that in this day and age, that one, you have more people resources. You know, I'm not the only IP attorney of color, right? There's plenty that you can choose from. You can just kind of go online through social media, you can find them, right? Before, when I was coming up in the 90s, I didn't know any attorneys, and I darn sure didn't know any IP attorneys. Really, intellectual property law intellectual property is kind of a buzzword. It's something that's been trending probably for the last 15, 20 years. But the patent office goes back to the late 1800s. It's in the Constitution. You've had patent attorneys for a long time. Back in the day, they were all kind of, not all, but many of them were kind of concentrated, at least in California and San Francisco, the city, right? You didn't really have a lot of IP attorneys, patent attorneys in particular, that were even in the South Bay. And so it's a great time that we live in, because the information, social media has to some extent democratized information. Let's put it out there, right? You don't have to go to law school. You don't have to read a book just to know the basics. Now, the basics are pretty much out here. You have access to people who look like you, who make sound like you. So at this point, there's really no excuse from you picking up the phone, reaching out to them and say, attorney, I just want 1 hour of your time. Here's your money for 1 hour of your time. Give me the information I need.
That's right. That's right. That's such a crucial investment right there. Just that 1 hour alone could completely change the trajectory. So I'll make this be completely transparent. I took part in an entrepreneur accelerator. I'm fortunate enough to have taken part in an accelerator in Silicon Valley, of all places, which broke down some of the particulars about startup culture and patenting your processes and your developments. Can you talk about why when you create something, or you are in the process of developing something, and maybe the marketplace or maybe a business advisor shares with you that, hey, this is something, Like there's something there. Can you share with, in the process of developing, at what point, if you are creating something, what point would you say, all right, it's time to go and have that 1 hour sit down with you or somebody else?
That's a good question, Tech. You know, the first thing when people come to me and they say, hey, I have a new invention, right? The first thing I ask them is, how long you been working on it, right? Right. And let me just say now, there's no bright line rule, right? You know, it's going to be different. You know, a lot of times it's case specific. But generally speaking, if I hear, yeah, I thought about this 6 weeks ago or 10 or 12 weeks ago, then I'll listen to them. We'll talk a little bit more. But I already have pretty much formulated in my mind that, you know what, you probably ain't ready yet. Now, if I hear you say, I've been thinking about this for a year or two, sometimes I throw a number out here, 10 years, 5 years, right? Then I say, you know what, that person, they probably really got something, because a lot of times you'll get the initial spark of an idea, but it takes a lot of time and labor and money to mature, to elevate the what you've thought of, the idea, to something that has utility, that's actually an invention, the solution to the problem, right? We all have ideas, but you got to kind of move it forward, and it takes time. Sometimes it may take a team, right? You can't do it all by yourself, right? And so again, I'm an entrepreneur. I had an idea back in 2012, and I just couldn't really shake the idea. Just started working on it. It took me a little bit longer than other. Sorry about that. It took me a while, but it took me 7 years to actually start the company, right? So, I'll say this without putting a time parameter on it. If you really feel that you have an idea, you feel like you pretty much nailed it, you don't really see anything like it in the marketplace, you know what the secret sauce is. You know what separates what you have versus what's in the public domain. And you can say, you know what, I know why those other solutions don't work. If you can answer that question, you're probably ready. You probably should call an attorney at that time.
Define bootlegging.
Bootlegging? Okay, well, in what context? You mean in terms of like copying artists?
I mean, I got a rap group. I've been doing this since high school. We got a following. We got a social media following. We do some shows. We put out some albums, pass it out, go on tour, give out CDs, pass out. Date myself. Next thing you know, it's on the radio, blowing up. Right. Or I create a documentary. Maybe I publish a book. Maybe I create a template. A framework, an outline. Maybe I create something. And next thing I know, it's everywhere.
Well, Tech, let me just say this. Bootlegging, copying is ubiquitous. It's all around you. It happens all the time. And the wonderful thing about social media is that you hear the stories. There's so many stories. Back in the day, stories used to travel word of mouth. But now you see it happen so much. No creator can really plead ignorance at this point in time, because you know, if you have something of value, something that's creative, and something that's kind of can penetrate the market, then you know you got to protect it. Here's the thing. Honestly, at this point in time, we should all know that if you have come up with something of value, you need to protect it. To not protect something at this point in time would be derelict of duty, especially if you're the leader. You're kind of leading your venture, right? And so copying is something that, imagine this, and this is not defending any people who copy, but imagine you came up with a great work, right, back in whatever time frame. So now you've elevated yourself amongst everyone else. You have corporations, people that give you money, that expect, okay, you know what, that first book you did was great. Give me 4 more like it. Well, guess what? That first album was great. New sound. Give me 4 more, according to the deal. And you're struggling to match your previous work. You had a lifetime to come up with the first one. There were no time parameters. There were no deadlines. You took your time and did it. Now someone says, guess what? You got 5 years to give me 4 more like that. And now people know that you're successful and they're sending you things, hoping that you will help them. But they're not realizing that, you know what? I'm under the gun myself. I have to come up with something creatively that's creative and something that's going to be approved by the powers that be, folks that I'm contractually bound to. That's a lot of pressure now, isn't it? So you see the temptation that I got all this stuff coming to me. I have access to the internet just like everyone else. I have more of a discerning eye and ear now that I'm in this position. Not justifying it, Tech, but you can see the temptation to steal. And still, actually, there's a good book out here. And the name of the book is Steal Like an Artist. The entire premise of the book is that some of your best artists, if you really do some research, and this happens all the time in every genre, stealing is something that occurs a lot. To the point where, honestly, I think it's an unwritten rule that is almost expected.
I think a lot
It's
of people
hard
can relate to that.
Yep, it's hard or it's difficult in any area of endeavor to find something that's going to penetrate the market, man. Especially now in 2022, we're all, quote unquote, we're all connected, or there are more connections. You're on social media. We all have social media. We all have YouTube, etc. So, there's a theory now in terms of startups. Back in the day, they were called, you would trend and then you hit kind of the hockey stick inflection point and bam. That was 90s paradigm. Now in the world we live in now, things are boom. If you got something, if you really, really have what they call product market fit, that thing is exploding before you even have the infrastructure around it. What am I trying to say? Well, it's hard. There's so many things out in the marketplace to some degree, and I have to say this very carefully, if it hasn't really, if it hasn't blown up yet, you probably need to keep tweaking it a bit more. Because you put out that album, the market heard it. They heard it. You put out that new product, the new clothing, they saw that. Right? You got a new restaurant, somebody tried it out. And if it ain't pop, so you can imagine, again, going with the bootlegging thing is that, okay, people in a position where they've been trying things forever, haven't worked. They see something, oh, you know what? I believe that'll work. It's not mine. I want to blow up anyway. Let me take that and run with it.
For some people who know me, they might know that I come from the medical world, right? I've had a long career in the medical business, and I still do to some degree. One of the doctors that I used to work with, and I'll try to be as specific as possible. I'm a hip surgeon, knee surgeon, an ankle surgeon, whatever you may have it. I see an incredible amount of volume, and Tiger Toledo, whenever we talk about this, volume gives you the opportunity to test things and to see things out. In the case of a medical person, somebody hip surgeon in this regard, but you can apply it to anything. Because I see so many hockey players, soccer players, track athletes, and I see so many people with these injuries, I then develop a technique to reconstruct a certain anatomical aspect of the hip, or to resurface the bone, or I create a protocol, a rehabilitation protocol to get you back from your rotator cuff tear twice as fast. In addition to that, I also develop or invent a surgical tool or surgical device that helps me to just visualize that tight piece of the joint so much easier, which allows me to then produce these outstanding results. Another doctor likes what I do. They see the outcomes, they see the positive results. They then use the exact same technique, not the device that I invented, however.
Right.
In the medical world, it's an honor, it's a privilege, it is a mark of the utmost respect that you cite or you give credit to the person who taught you this, right? And to do the opposite would be suicide, effectively, right? In the business world, in your world, or in the legal world, how is that viewed? I come up with a device, I come up with a protocol or something, and it's given this, it's well received, put it that way. And then as a result, I invent something. I invent a knee brace, or I invent something. And then the people who learn from that, they then attribute that success to, the work, the years of work that you put in.
Right.
How is that translating into the business world?
Good question. In your hypothetical, Tech, your employer, assuming that you had an employer, would be delighted. and because why? These employment attorneys have gotten craftier and craftier. All of you guys who have employers now, right? And not work you're doing in terms of an independent contractor, although I'll get to that as well. Within your employment agreement, there's going to be what we refer to as an IP assignment agreement, where you agree, in terms of you taking this job for employment, you agree that any and all intellectual property, including things that could be patented, trademark, copyright, etc., that you created or generated as a result of working on a job, or if what you created is related to the business of your employer, you agree to automatically assign it to us. Not that they're going to ask you, it's compulsory. You took this paycheck, we get all of your intellectual property. Now, state law, like we're in California, the state says, well, you can't take it all. You can take, if they create something that's totally outside of the realm of the business, right? Then, and if they did it using their own resources, you can't take that. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you feel that you have an idea, and wait a minute, I believe if you do X, Y, and Z, and you do a little experimentation, I believe you can come up with something. At that point that you have the idea, you really have to make a life decision. And I'm not by any means encouraging anyone to quit their job. Let me repeat, I'm not suggesting that you do that. But what I'm saying is that if you do come up with something that's related to your job function or related to the business of your employer, just understand that they're going to say, we'll appreciate that. Thank you. And because via contract law. Now, in terms of patent law, you would have to be listed as an inventor. If your company decided to file a patent application, it'll be in your name, inventor, but below the inventorship will be what we have information about the assignee. You, the employer or the assigner, via contract law, via your employment agreement, is compulsory. You ain't got to agree at all. You can quit the next day, don't matter. We got that. And then, there's paperwork to make sure they have it. So in terms of Tech, your question goes to in terms of credit attribution versus legal ownership rights. Yeah, you should give credit attribution, things, especially for things that are kind of written and written works. But in terms of, broadly speaking, in terms of ideas, creations, etc., that if you work for someone, it belongs to them. Now, even in the independent contractor scenario, you have to read the agreement, right? Because if the party on the other side, if they got a lawyer who knows a little bit about IP, they're going to say, as a result of you performing this job for us, although you're not an employee, you're just an independent contractor, guess what? Well, all the IP shifts this way. So here's the thing. At this point in time, we're in the information age, lawyers in terms of a guild, and we're not talking about the top, but the top law firms. If you go down the pyramid where the bulk of lawyers are, we have to be more reasonable. Prior to the internet age, and I like to think I'm an ethical dude, but at the end of the day, I can't separate myself from my guild. I'm part of the crew, part of the lawyers crew. Before the internet, the public get hit over the head because you didn't know. There was no way for you to know. What you're going to do, go to law school for 3 years? You didn't know. So even just giving you, dispensing information to you came with a premium. You can go online right now and get a contract for $20. You can have done that back in the day. The point I'm trying to make is that if you just want to have a conversation with a lawyer, the average attorney today, break them off a couple $100 and get the information that you need. You come up with an idea, you think you may have something, but wait a minute, I heard because I have an employer, I'm an independent contractor. Call your lawyer at that point in time. I had a situation where somebody down south called me, and the company, it wasn't like it was a tech company they worked for. I ain't gonna name the type, but it was, in terms of tech, it's probably one of the lowest tech you could get. But then the employment lawyers have become more sophisticated today, where they see any means that they can get as many rights as possible. Loyalty to companies, it ain't there anymore. People don't look like I'm gonna work for this company for 40 years. So while they got you, they got to get everything from you. Right. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
No, absolutely. A company like GE, for instance, General Electric or Apple, they care about patent, don't they? They care about. So if they care about it, should we care about it? Like, should the individual notary public, book, author, digital creator, if a company like that cares about it, $1 trillion international, does that mean we should care about it too?
That's a great setup, Tech. The answer is yes, but let me give you another answer as well. It's a quiet kept secret that at the top of that pyramid, when you talk about the top, like the Fortune 500, if they had it their way, they'll never say it. But if they had it their way, they would eliminate the patent system. The patent system really is for us. It's for the little dudes coming up. If you have a patent system and you came up with a witty idea or some widget or some creation, right? You came up with lyrics to a song, a new melody, whatever. The only way you can really get into the market, and we know it's warfare, business is war. We know this at this point in time, right? The only way you can, I ain't gonna say one only way, but one of the ways you can kind of get in is that you can claim property rights to your creation. The big companies who already killing the game, who got 60% market share, if there was no patent system, they'd just scour and say, appreciate that, little man, I'll take that from you. Thank you. Holla, and just go put it out. And they just use their resources and market dominance to crush you. Right. So what I'm gonna say is this, Tech, as us trying to come up as entrepreneurs, as visionaries, you got to use the tools that you have. That's probably one of the most lethal tools you have, or weapons within your arsenal is the IP system. Why are you not using the IP system when you cannot compete with Sony? You can't do it. Now, as an independent songwriter, you can't do it. You can't compete with Facebook. If you're trying to come up with your little social media platform, and I don't mean to be condescending, but like, how else do you do it? It gives you a legal claim in court. Guess what? I came up with this idea. The U.S. Patent Office, now we're in a first to file system. I have to get on that later, but guess what? They reduced the fees for micro entity folks who make under $200,000, right? Or you got small entity, you got 3 classifications. They tax the big boys, but for us, the fees are lower. So, okay, you're able to memorialize your creations, and there's a means of protection there where you can lock it up. You got to pay a lawyer, but okay. So if you do see when the big boys copy you, you can go on the court. You have a legal claim. If there's no patent system or no intellectual property system, then guess what? How you gonna fight them? You can pull any of these companies. I ain't gonna name no names. Pull them in court. Hey man, you copy me, man. I can prove it. Here's the original, what I did, and your artist, it sounds just like me. And they want no cover. What's up? So it does not make sense. And this is the thing, man. As entrepreneurs, as visionaries, if you're gonna do the darn thing, man.
Right.
Quit playing. Right? And I'm talking as us. Quit playing. We're going to fight. You're going to fight. You know business war. You know these companies ain't going to just let you come in here and take 5% of the market, 10% of the market. Some of us have, our objective to take over the game. How are you going to take over the game if you're not really serious? The IP system is really for you. The way it was designed that way, honestly. That was the whole thing about the U.S. was the sole country up until 2013 where we were on the first to invent system, which means that, look, before they changed the law, and there's still people mad about them changing the law, where guess what? If you could prove that you came up with it first in terms of conception, reduction of practice, you can prove it. Okay, guess what? No matter this person filed first, you can get it. That was for the little guy. That changed now. So if you get that digital or that spiritual download, right, then you better act upon it. Don't tarry.
So what I'm hearing is ownership, and right. I have my owner be on. Shout out to
wow.
Owner be on, which is one of the things that that we live by over here. So that's why this topic is so relevant. It's so incredibly relevant. And when you talk about reducing the fees, how much would it cost for somebody to go in and begin the process of trying to either copyright or patent it? By the way, what is the difference between copyright, patent, trademark, and then as far as fees and stuff, what would they expect to cost? Because, we are notary publics. Some notary publics think they're lawyers. They think they went to law school, sat in the law library. They went down to study. And a lot of our clients, they also call us with that same mentality that I know what a power of attorney is. I can draw up a trust. But they never sat in the law library. They never studied a book, and they probably watch a bunch of YouTube. But if ownership is the ultimate goal, if we understand that the system was made for us, in this case, the IP system, up until this point, which you're talking about, going about that, just beginning that process, what type of fees would they be expect, or should they even just forget about the fees and say, listen, the end goal is the payoff, not so much the fee?
A good question. Let's do this. Let's talk about the fees assessed by the Copyright Office, the Trademark Office, and the Patent Office. Okay, because the service fees for attorneys are going to vary, but For copyright, you're looking at somewhere between $55 and $65 per work. Come on now, you can't get no cheaper than that now. You come on now, $55, $65. Now the attorney gonna put on his time, but at the end of the day, I think notaries, you guys sit in a very unique place because you are acquainted with a lot of the documents, a lot of procedures. But I would still recommend to get the attorney because guess what? You can hold the attorney accountable, right? The attorney got malpractice insurance. If you fall and you screw it up yourself, then who you gonna blame? The attorney does this all day, every day. The attorney got to sit up here and read all the updated cases, etc. But so $55, $65 on copyright. On a trademark, you're looking at, depending on how you file it, and we're talking about electronically. I don't think anybody files written things in paper, although you can, they're gonna tax you. But you're looking at $250 or $350. You know, $250 you use the ID that they provide in terms of listing of goods and services. $350 you want to be more creative, but that's $250 or $350. Now the attorney going to add that their fee. But again, on the patent side, now shoot, you're probably looking at about a little bit less than $500 for micro entity. You know, even for a small entity, I think it's about that in terms of fees. If you want accelerated examination to kind of speed it through, like within 12 months of disposition, for them to disposition your application, then you're gonna pay several thousand for that. But that's what you're looking for. Now, if you want to file abroad, you know, those fees you gotta, you know, either you file a PCT or Madrid application, or you file directly to those countries, and you have to kind of deal with those countries. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can see what the government, they've done their part per se, although I'm still not happy about them changing that law. We're gonna get into that. You know, but the fees in terms of the filing fees are, you know, are more than reasonable. Now the attorney's going to charge whatever their attorney charge, and that's just kind of the cost of doing business, right?
There's a question from the chat. It's from Jasmine. Kind of goes into a little bit of what I wanted to ask as well. She says, say I wrote a book about business and stated in the book that entrepreneurship starts with mindset. Entrepreneurship starts with mindset. Would that fall under commonly known information, or could someone who said that in another book, could they sue me?
That's a great question. That's a great question. That's a legal question. Well, that statement, it depends on how you're trying to protect it. If you're trying to protect it in terms of, well, let's say, well, I wrote it, so therefore I have copyright property interest in that, then that's one analysis. If you're saying, well, I wrote it and it's a quotable and people now associate that quote with my work with me, since it was in my work, and I'm going to be producing other works, like more than one book, then that's more of a trademark issue. But let me just say this. On the trademark side, all of it really depends. If you try to basically file it as a trademark application because that quote in your book, for some reason, a lot of people quote it and they associate you with it. If you're going to be producing more books, you could. Right now, the trademark office, before during the examination of a trademark application, they're going to want to know whether the mark, or would you say the mark is it something that's commonly used, right? And what they hit you with is what we call a 2A refusal, because they'll say, guess what? That's in the public domain already, right? I'm trying to think of a good example. Oh, I'll give you one. The one LeBron filed for, Taco Tuesday. LeBron, you should have called me, man. But he tried to file for the trademark Taco Tuesday when he first moved to LA. And man, I ain't never seen a trademark application examine that fast. I mean, soon as he filed it, they must have said, yo, get on this today. by the next day, like, reject it. Like, dude, don't come over here try to get, because listen, you guys, the IP system, the trademark office, the copyright office, the patent office, you're asking for property rights. It's intellectual property because the work came through your mind. It's not tangible. We can't see it, Well, I guess you could for copyright, but again, it's something that was created from the mind. But you're asking the government that, yo, I lay claim to this and can't nobody get it. That's part of property rights. If I own this home and this property, and I tell you to get off my property, you trespassing, you best to get up out of here. Because I have property rights here. Same thing. Now, her question as well, now from a copyright standpoint, well, if someone used it before in a similar context, and the question is, do you have rights to that specific, that piece of that quotable? Well, we can find it somewhere else. Probably not. If it's in this, because, and again, when it comes to copyright too, the amount taken always comes into consideration. If it's in a book, it's going to be difficult, but if it's in a rap song, you can take 4 or 5 words. Like Living La Vida Loca. That's what Cisco did when he took that part from Old Boy's song and put it in the what song, right? Right. Wow. That became part of the hook. That was enough. So the context too really kind of depends. So we'll have to kind of talk offline to kind of go more into it, but I hope that helps.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
When something is your creation. So here's a question from Regina. She says, in regards to intellectual property, trademark registration, is it a lengthy process? If so, what's the turnaround time frame of completion?
Yeah, you know what? It's become lengthier post-pandemic when they're catching up. And here's the thing: the trademark office, the U.S. Patent Trademark Office in general, or the entire IP system, is a boom for the U.S. Treasury.
Really,
economy go down. People say, you know what? I should have started that business. Filings go up. Economy's doing well. You know what? I got enough disposable income to go and pursue this idea I have. So, filings don't typically go down. Then you got other people from offshore that'll basically file and want to get U.S. property rights. So to answer your question, generally speaking, right now, if you file an application, we're not going to hear anything back for 8 months. Pre-pandemic, we would hear something 3 to 4 months. They came up with an advisory at the beginning of this year. The trademark office said, hey, I know y'all know things are slower. It's going to be slow. So basically 8 months, we're not hear anything. I would say, generally speaking, to get a registration was typical. I would say probably 14 to 16 months from the time you file it is a decent time, which is, the fastest, like copyright, you can get something, you get a registration there like 2 to 3 months, right? Just to let the viewers know that trademarks, you can file the U.S. here, U.S. Trademark Office, to get get national rights in all U.S. territories. Also, in every state that you live in, there's a Secretary of State's office. You can also file for a state trademark that comes into play. Like, for example, states that kind of quote unquote legalize marijuana, like California, you can get state trademarks for those type of goods. If you file the U.S. Trademark Office, they're gonna be happy to deny your application because it's still Schedule 1. It's still a crime. It's still illegal federally. They gotta do something about that. But yeah,
when you talk about a boom system, you're talking about that economy goes down, people start thinking about, they get creative, right? People start coming up with stuff. And I think what that sort of ties into, that's related to a lot of us here, because coming up with businesses and coming up with systems and processes themselves. So getting paid from your patent, getting paid from your work or your intellectual property, right? How's that tie into not just long-term wealth production, but wealth creation for your entire family? I'm talking about forever, right? For your great grandkids. How does one who has this great idea, you came up with this great piece of software, you came up with this app, this book, and then this, or the notary war room, right? That's a question we have to ask. How does something like that, pay your family, protect your family for the rest, forever? How does that?
Well, Tech, basically, that falls to an entire area of what we refer to as licensing. There's a whole ecosystem for that alone. And I would advise anyone, don't try that at home. So at the end of the day, in terms of being able to pass down or to monetize on the intellectual property, it's going to be tied to the underlying value of the property itself. If you got a catalog of music that the world loves, right? You know, and that music you believe can stand the test of time. Like a lot of our artists, you got works out here that can stand the test of time.
Sure indeed.
Well, basically you would license it to someone. Now, you know, I'm a prisoner in terms of how I was raised. You know, I was raised in Georgia by a woman who was born in 1916. Okay. So Teddy, I ain't giving none up in terms of assigning the rights, in terms of selling it. Property, if I own the property, I ain't giving it up. So the most you could ever get from me will be something akin to a license, but to each his own, right? But to answer your question, if you can monetize it today, then you could probably plot in terms of see what the royalties may be down the line. But the truth be told, and see, here's the thing, you guys. There's so many new platforms coming up. TikTok is different than Facebook and Instagram. It's different. I'm hearing songs. I'm like, man, this is popping. You know how they have the songs in the background, do a little dance, and do little memes. So here's the thing: if you create something, the truth be told, nobody really knows how you can monetize it 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Listen, all of us young enough, God willing, we see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who knows what new platform is going to be. So I would behoove you to take a conservative approach and say, sorry, you guys, I got to figure out how to turn off my do not disturb, but I would behoove you guys not to dispose of it entirely. Now, how do you license it? It's going to depend on the work. It's going to depend on what you on the property, and then you get an attorney just to specifically draft an agreement that makes sense for that type of property, right? But I guess my overall point is that right now because there's still so many shifts technologically, I would basically be very prudent in terms of how you dispose of rights.
Wait a second. Run that back. You said as an individual raised in the South, raised in Georgia, got moms who she saw some stuff. Grandma saw some stuff. Mm-hmm. She saw everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To you, to bring that, to say that, I don't know if y'all caught that. You said never sell.
But see,
all right, break that down.
But Tech, this is Teddy who grew up a certain way and heard all these stories and saw things to tell in. So again, I can't push this on my clients, but for me, I'm not selling it at all, because that ultimately, once you part with something, again, every situation is different. See, and especially the entrepreneurs, I'm gonna get to it, Tech. I'm gonna take a roundabout way. Once you give something to someone, you give that property, you can't get it back. See, we have this cultural thing where sometimes you give something, you think, well, that'd be cool. Maybe nah. The general rule is once you part with that, you give it, it's done. And if they exploit it in a way, because look, this is what it comes down to a lot of times. And Tech, we talked about this before. If somebody wants to buy something from you, you know what they're really saying? What's that? What's really going on, Brother Tech, is that guess what? They see something in what you have that you don't see.
Right.
Because they're never going to, who buys something for what it's worth? I'm only going to buy it if I believe that, guess what? That's property could gain in value, and I know how to do it. Would you really buy a house if you knew the home could never appreciate? Why would you buy it? Jesus, good Lord of mercy. Everybody's talking. But would you buy it? If you bought a house for, I ain't gonna use California prices, let's use non-California prices for $400,000, but you knew the thing would never appreciate the value. You would look for something that you thought, you know what, this thing can increase in value over time. This will be an asset for the family. Same thing when it comes to properties you own and when it comes to business.
True indeed. That's true indeed.
So that's why I'm not giving it up, because those who have been wiser than us, those who have had access to information that we didn't have, they knew that the entire time. The game was to get you to get off what God gave you for them, so they benefit from it. Georgia down south, that happened all day, every day. We got tricked. We signed things we didn't understand what we were signing. We trusted people. Generally speaking, when it comes to a contract, you praying, Lord, I hope it just work out. But they praying too.
That's right.
Lord, I hope you'll wise up and use common sense that you gave them to get somebody to help read the contract and use common sense.
So you got a company and you got an app, or you're in a startup phase, you got a book, somebody shows up to your doorstep with a duffel bag full of more zeros than you ever seen in your life.
Right.
You're not even done with your project. Would you sell shares of that, or would you sell components of that, or do you hold on to it?
Tech, let me just say this for the record. Teddy got issues. Even as a lawyer, I have some issues, right? So I'm not going to tell everyone to do it my way. Truth be told, somebody may give you a great opportunity, right? And you may feel that, hey, I want to go ahead and take the bag, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But just understand, when you take that bag, what's really going on is that the person that's buying it from you, they have a greater vision or understanding in what you have than what you have, than you do. Typically, unless you're scamming them. And we're not talking about scamming. Let's take scamming out of it. But if someone wants to purchase something from you, what they're saying is, guess what? This money I'm giving you, what I see in what you have is great, way greater than the money. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy it.
Yes. One of my
So just understand that your vision is somewhat limited in what you have. Just like they say, a prophet is never honored his own home. Well, you can apply that concept to everything else. Listen, this is what happened with Steve Jobs and I believe Xerox when it came to the mouse. He went up in there. He said, what's that? They had a whole box of like, you want that? He was like, yeah, I'll take all of them to the end of rights. This is the missing piece we needed.
Wow.
They simply had a mouse to help you with help you with the user interface, better point, and they didn't know what they had. So sometimes in our prayers, we have to ask God. This is not a spiritual channel right here, but we have to ask God for vision and understanding of what He's already given us. All these prayers going up, and the Lord looking down like, I gave him everything. I gave him this person's life. He's skilled in administration. This person got the resources. She is good at organization. I gave him everything. While all these prayers keep coming up in there, coming up.
That's
so
right.
And and it happens all the time where you are part with something that you're not knowing that you part with something God already, he already, the blessing right there, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah, so it'll break down to, like the individual themselves, their situation, them circumstances. You might want to take something that or an amount because, or a partnership that you may not have otherwise, have understood the full details, but you don't do that without, or what I'm hearing is that you wouldn't do that without the proper guidance or counsel or advice. One of my mentors, Tiger Toledo, who's on here, he says, never take the first offer.
Right. Who gives the best offer the first time? Just like in the long game, the settlement offer. Man, I got a few cases right now. One day insulting us, man. This is insulting, man. Like, I don't even see how y'all can put that on the paper. Right? Now here we are close to the trial. Okay, now this is sounding about right. Still ain't where we need to get to, but it's sounding about right. All I'm saying is, look, I'm not saying you can't sell what you have. I'm not saying that you can't sell your company. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is just understand that amount they're giving you for it. Just understand that their vision, understanding of where they see they can take it is way above what they offer you. Otherwise, they wouldn't offer it to you. There's an old expression down south that goes something like this. If I had to pay you what you were worth, I couldn't hire you.
Wow, that could change my entire dynamic on how I approach employment and contract work. And yeah. But we also understand that, that's, it comes with, with how we move with business. And in terms of when you're trying to measure what's valuable, is there any type of metric or any type of analytical statistic that tells you that this is valuable? I create a minimal viable product. It's stripped down, but it still works. How do I know? Is it because it's popular? Is it because of the number of units it sells, the number of income? Is it because people are, my users are sticking around? How do I know that this is valuable?
Well, here's the thing, Tech, that question is probably more of a business question and a question that you have people who work within if like Arthur Anderson, folks, economists can give you an answer to that question. Matter of fact, and while we're on the topic, I'm gonna ask you a question about all of you entrepreneurs should make friends with economists. Part of your answer, and an economist could answer that question in terms of utility, in terms of momentum, in terms of how you're penetrating the market. What they won't tell you is that in a lot of these tech companies, you think that their top employees in terms of value are the engineers coming to all these sophisticated tech things, right? And the programmers. But the economists, they're the people who say, well, guess what? All right, they know how to leverage and maximize labor. They also know how to really determine how to put out products for the market as it is right now. There was an article that went under the radar that came out here several years ago that some of these economists, they're some of the highest paid people in these tech companies. In fact, in a lot of graduate schools, they poaching them. They ain't even getting their PhD yet. They poaching them.
Right out of school.
So, I would say utility, that's kind of out of my lane, Tech, but to me, utility, if people using that thing, like, I can't stop using this thing. It works. It does, because every product is a good service. It's supposed to perform a certain function. And that's how you got to think about your product. What job does it perform? And and can it do it well? And is there any other products out here that performs this job? And that's in everything in life, right? And hopefully we can articulate it. But I would say that momentum is one, and utility. If you see that, this thing is kind of like, man, the numbers are growing in terms of amount of customers, users, etc., and they're using it. That's why TikTok is such a force, It's because it's spreading and people are on the app all day.
Right.
High utility.
Let me ask you this, because I know you promised us an hour, and now we are just at time. So
Okay,
I want to make sure
fine.
that I respect your
Yeah.
time. So I do appreciate you giving us this much amount of time. I know a lot of, and then we'll try to wrap this up and then take some questions. I know a lot of people like to romanticize vision boards and their you know, their prayers and, you know, what they want to happen, but really the action is really what, the decisiveness is really what gives us the results. Can you give us maybe one or two, what type of action steps could anyone watching this who's an entrepreneur, who's a book author, who maybe have developed some type of protocol, what type of action steps could they take? Something, nothing too complicated, but just something that they could do that, so that they can cross off that vision board, or at least take off that, or, you know, we always say you can't notarize your thoughts. That's something I say. You can't notarize your thoughts. It's in your head. It's got to be on paper. It's got to be real. It's got to be tangible. So the idea that I got this vision in my head, I wrote it down, I got my chalkboard up there, that's not what's going to get it done. What type of action steps, what type of decisions that I could take, you know, as small as it might be, that I can make this a reality?
Well, I'll say this, and I want to say one that's very fundamental, but I'm gonna keep it real with you. I think in the 90s, I was in high school and college in the 90s. I keep referring back to that, referencing that decade, but like I would say what I mean, it wasn't really commonly thought of or known amongst at least my tribe that you needed a team to build something. If you're going to build something, a lot of times you kind of went off on yourself and try to build it, and you know, it just didn't really pop the way you really wanted to. We didn't really understand that simply because you were a beast in terms of making barbecue and ribs and all that would qualify you to be a business owner, that you could own the business of selling barbecue. It wasn't generally known. I hate to say it like that, but it really wasn't. So the first thing is, like, if you are building something, you have a venture, if you don't have a team, that's almost, honestly, it's negligent. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look outside of our culture, look at other successful people and see they had a team. And to some extent, I think this is why, at least at the time, New York hip hop became so powerful, because you really look at it, they didn't call them teams, they called them crews. They were crews, right? But, and I won't get into that, but I'm saying is that, like, you need to have a team of folks with disparate skills. You, as the visionary, need to really sit down and say, okay, I need this, and this. All right? You need, you can't run a business without marketing. So either you hire an external team or you get somebody on the team who knows about that, right? There's, and so that's the first thing you're going to need. If you don't have a team, and I want to tell you, if you want to go into the VC world and try to get money, then they're going to not take you seriously if you don't show up with a team. And then number two, at the end of the day, it all comes down to what the product is. How good is the product? Right. So if we're going to be obsessive, then we need to obsess about that. About making sure that the product is A1. And a lot of times it's hard to do that if you got to pretty much do everything. You're wearing too many hats. Somebody got to practice. Someone has to focus on the product.
Wow.
You got a strong product. If you have a strong product, it's hard to screw. You can screw everything else up, but you're gonna be all right. The opposite ain't necessarily true.
Wow. Yeah, you could. Yeah, So in terms of if you got a strong product, you got a strong, successful team, or at least you're delegating, you're optimizing, everyone's role, then what do you feel? And then this will be my last question, and then we'll kind of open it up to the question. Venture capital funding. How do you feel about seeking venture capital funding, assuming you have a viable product, you have at least one other person doing something, right? You're not doing everything, right? Is that a reality for people who are in the startup phase, or do you now have to transition into a different role as yourself, taking it back from just their everyday stuff in terms of seeking out venture capital funding?
Well, I'll say this with VC. First of all, I don't want to say anything too controversial, right? Because I don't want to be coming and saying
the room of controversy, man. Come on.
Right. Teddy said that. Well, just understand that it is known. This is not conspiracy theory that, when it comes to VC funding, that the purpose of when a VC gives an investment, each investment has the way it's written in terms of the agreement is to recoup the fund. So I can lose if I give 20, if I make 20 investments, I can lose on 19. That one will make up for all the losses of the other 19, and we still make out like bandits. That's the VC model. So it would be wise for you to make sure that not you using your own understanding, but make sure that you have the folks in place to really understand the deal. Because the VC model, they know most of their investments are going to fail. So if this business model works for them, the VC model, what does that say about every individual agreement in terms of how it benefits the entrepreneur? This is known, right? They only need a couple to win, and they know they're going to lose most of the time. So each deal, so I would say, there's becoming more and more ways to get finance. I'm not saying that you should not take, if someone wants to give you finance or invest, and it's a venture capitalist, I think that is great. I think that's wonderful. But I'm just saying, make sure you understand the deal. Me personally, as a lawyer, I don't like playing a game that I ain't skilled in. Like, I'm not gonna play your game. I'm gonna play my game so I can dominate you in my game. If I play a game that I'm a novice in, I'm more likely gonna lose. So why would I play that game? I'm just saying, there's other ways you can get financing. You may want to look into it. Not to say that you shouldn't take any money from VCs, but just understand what their business model is.
That's true. That's true. Understanding what the game actually is. What is a venture capitalist at the end of the day? That's so, man, that I can't hammer that home enough. That's powerful right there. And it's a reality for some people that they jump into something, get excited about it, and then they end up screwing themselves. But because they don't understand the game, they try to understand it themselves rather than hiring you, getting somebody who can understand it.
Right. We got to get out. My thing is, it's not about, if I'm going to engage in anything, especially like an agreement, a contract, I'm going to make sure that, Teddy, I understand the agreement. I'm going to understand the terms of the agreement. If I don't understand it, I'm not going to act like I understand it. I'm going to say, I don't understand it. And I'm not going to trust you that you understand it. Ultimately, I'm responsible for what I put myself into, right? So again, just understand, for the VC model, it's set up that most of their investments are going to fail. But the way they structure each deal is that if any one of them wins, they make out like bandits. So what must that mean for the other person, the other entity on the other side of that transaction? What? And again, I'm not saying that you can't make money, but just understand that the deal, it has to be one-sided, because most of the investment fail. So just understand what you get into. Every deal is different. I'm not going to sit here and say you should not take money from a VC. They're giving more African Americans money, which is great. But if I can keep it real, Tech, I hate to say this, you can talk to some people who founders who didn't got that money. And I have to be very, very careful the way I say this. Look like a good idea over there. Guess what? We'll give them the money. We get to put people on the board. We'll give him, if he can perform a miracle, throw a Hail Mary within a certain amount of time, give him 2 years. Don't get it done in 2 years. We kick him out. We'll put in a CEO from Ivy League school, someone that we trust, someone who we feel that can do the job, someone that we feel comfortable with that can do it. You took that money, didn't you, right? The fine print, you didn't know. Now they got more people on the board than people in the original team. Don't think these when they part with these millions, that the game is almost kind of fixed at that point. And I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to have these VCs coming at me, little old me. But if you were to talk to some of these founders, you see, listen, people like to talk about the wins. You don't hear about no losses. I read a book that was written out here in Silicon Valley in the 80s. And they talk about how all these companies, when they hit their liquidation event and they make all this money, but just think about, we all went to school, just think about it logically, physics. If one person, one company wins big, if this one company cashes out for 30 billion, what must that say about the other tens of thousands of companies and entrepreneurs? What happened to them?
True indeed.
Things gonna balance out, right? So if this joker could cash out for 25 billion, a lot of people left here without their shirt.
Wow.
We got to use common sense too now. Who gonna give you tens of millions for an investment and not structure the contract where, guess what? It's gonna be more and more favorable to them. They got the money.
They're the ones taking all the risks. They're accepting all the risks. At least early on, they are.
You talk to some of these, and again, I'm not trying to discourage. I'm just saying, make sure that you get the people around you that really understand what you're going to be contractually bound to and what position you're going to put your baby, the company, into. The truth of the matter, let me add some balance. You can't really scale a company without some capital, without sufficient capital. Every company, every one of them still take loans. All the big tech companies, they have loans, even just to help with the cash flow. So I'm not saying that you can't receive investment and things like that for capital. You need capital. But what I'm saying is, make sure you understand the terms of your deal. And if you don't understand it, it's cool to say you don't understand it. Hire some people who do. And if you just can't understand it, then maybe you should wait a little bit before you do that.
Wow. I got a whole page of notes here. I mean, from ownership to something you hit on early on, which was the history from the 1800s, from the origination of the patent office to, your own family, talking about how deals were done in the 80s. The history, to me, is also so important, is knowing how things came about, whether it's a product or whether it's a law. What issue was occurring at that time to then develop or create this intervention? And I took away a lot of gems. I appreciate you giving us this information. We got a little bit of time. I don't want to take up too much of time. You've already over delivered, promised us an hour, so you already gave us more. So if you got a moment, anybody wants to
any questions?
And come and go ahead and ask Mr. Herbert, Teddy Patty here, who's our esteemed guest. You want to take off a mute, maybe just say a thank you or at least ask a question. We got time for at least 2. Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you. Then that way you can ask your question. there was a question about can you explain the difference between copyright, trademark, and patent? You kind of touched on that earlier.
Okay, but specifically, okay. So a patent, anytime you, okay. So let's start with, all right, let me start with trademarks. The trademark is basically anytime you have something that serves a mark, what we refer to as a mark, typically it's going to be a word mark, like a word or phrase. Could have a logo, like design element logo. Sometimes it could be a sound, like a Harley, the engine. People who in the motorcycle, oh, that's a Harley. That could be trademark, right? It could be a color, like Facebook, their shade of blue. So anything that's a mark, anything that can appeal to the senses, that serves as a source identifier, right? I've never been to Nike headquarters. I never met Phil Knight. I see that swoosh, that's a trademark. Oh, that's a company in Oregon. They get busy over there in terms of sports apparel and sport and shoes. If it's to serve as a source identifier in the marketplace, to say so when customers see that mark, whether it's the engine humming of a motorcycle or the swoosh check mark on shoes, or if there's a color gradient like on social media, it's supposed to say, oh, okay, this is associated with this entity that I've never seen anymore, right? And I've ascribed goodwill, at least the public has, in terms of the quality and expectations we can get from their goods. That's a trademark. Okay. If you're using that mark in commerce, trademark. A copyright is any type of work. And so if I create a painting, that is my work. If I score some music, that's my work, right? Let's see here. If I come up with, some type of play, right? That is my work, right? And so whatever your work is, that's your own creation. That's something that you created. Then a copyright basically gives you rights to the work, such that if anyone tries to reproduce the work, right? So let's say I have a store and I sell barbecue at the store and I'm playing hip hop music in the background. Do I have a license to do that? That's not personal use. I'm using it, my music. I'm putting that hip hop out there to draw people into the store. They hear them tunes, they come over to the store to buy my barbecue. Right? I have property rights to it, which in what we call the bundle of rights, I can prevent you from using it. I can prevent you from making an adaptation of what we call a derivative work. If I come up with a song, you just can't come up with a remix to my song. You got to get permission to do that. A patent is anything that is really, a patent is any type of like apparatus, device, system, or method that has utility. It has to do something, right? And so if I create a new widget that has some type of functionality, I would get a patent on that. In other words, no other person can produce a widget that has this functionality or is configured this way to have this functionality, or has this whole process step flow to create this. You would get a patent on that, right? So even if the patent is something that is, well, I won't say that, but that is based on patent. So sometimes it's hard to kind of distinguish, between the two. But in the law, we just say, well, a patent has to have these elements. It has to have utility. It has to be novel. In other words, it has to be new. Trademark, it has to be distinctive. In other words, that mark needs to look and appear, and it's appeal to the senses in a way that's distinctive from all other marks to related goods, right? And then a copyright, it just needs to be original. In other words, did the creator himself, the person who created it, did they create it themselves? Or was it an adaptation, or did they copy someone else? If it came from their mind, no matter if it's very similar to what somebody else came up with, and they didn't know about, if it came from their mind, it meets the originality requirement. And so guess what? they can get a copyright for that. So you get copyrights for works, you get a trademark registration for marks, things that are, for commercial use, and then you get a patent for inventions that that have utility, that it performs some purpose.
I have a question for you. Have you ever been sued?
Me personally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone told me you're not in business until you've been sued.
Oh, in that sense, no.
Okay.
No. But you know what? Well, yeah, kinda. It's not what you kind of typical think of, but here's the thing right here. That is some truth to that.
By the way, y'all.
No,
People in California will sue you.
Yeah, well, it's some truth to that. And the reason why it is because business is war. And so it's hard to get market share without bases. It's like being in an octagon. There are rules, but at the end of the day, it's 8 people in here and I ain't trying to get hit.
Some blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was I like that saying, but I don't want to ever get sued like that. But they say
if you do a big business, it's inevitable.
No.
Well, I'll say it's inevitable that you will be involved in a lawsuit.
Gotcha.
It's inevitable.
Gotcha.
The bigger the company, the more your target anyway. Even in terms of like IP, in terms of what they call patent trolling, they go after all the big companies. If you're making money, then you automatically become a target because everyone knows you have money. So they're going to definitely sue you, because even to sell it for like nuisance value, I'll take 15, 20 grand. You gonna sell it because it don't make sense. It don't make sense for you to pursue these big companies. They get sued. They get new complaints during it every week. Every week somebody's suing Facebook.
Wow.
Every week. They get a new lawsuit every week. Are
these from what I understand as to be, could you use the word trolling? I've never heard that expression. I know that expression, but maybe you're using it in a different context from what I understand. But the trolling, and me from being in this accelerator, understanding the difference between what may be trolling, but a fast follower, somebody who likes Facebook or likes TikTok, right, versus an imitator, somebody who just completely rips it off, versus somebody who just admires them, or somebody who just, like, is there a difference between what you're describing, trolling, versus you put out something and then somebody who just, I really like what you put out, or somebody who just completely imitating, or somebody who just...
Well, when we say trolling, like in pop culture, trolling means like when you're kind of like giving someone a hard time for the sake of really getting attention. You just kind of like, but in patent law, the term patent troll has been around for 30 years. A patent troll is a company that acquires patents for the sole use of being able to sue companies. So they sit down, they project where the market is going to go, and they draft patents for that, such that they know, okay, the technology is going to eventually get here, and when it gets here, I'm going to sue. That's something called a patent troll. But like your social media troll, you just said all type of crazy stuff for attention, right?
Yeah, we got enough of those. We need less of those people.
Right. Well, we need less patent trolls too.
Less of those, even more.
Right.
There's a question from YouTube. It says, "Can you speak to what it takes to protect a proprietary business process, please?"
That's a good question. To some degree, still, you can file what you call a business method patent, if you know how to do it. So you can file a business method patent, or you can really put lock it up in a way, or keep it disclosed in a manner that it really becomes trade secret. And just make sure that your employees and contractors, they understand you working here, but there's certain information here in terms of how we do business, or how we set up our business model for our company, that is trade secret, because it gives us a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
Yes. Powerful trade secret. So you guys heard it. You guys who are fortunate enough to be here and get your questions asked, thank you guys for coming. Listen, Mr. Herbert T. Patty, it's been an honor, it's been a privilege. He knows his history, guys. Listen, he knows his stuff. He's bringing it to you, bringing information that is going to help you to exponentially take off in whatever business opportunity that you have. Can you please give us some closing words, plug your firm, whatever events you have going on, or any type of announcements you want to make, or anything you want to put on our radar? How can we support you?
Well, hey, again, pleasure to be here, you guys. You know, I'm always happy to have this, have these type of conversations. I would say that, if you know that you really have something, you feel that, you have a venture and you really believe in what you have, right? Which if you don't, you should just go ahead and do something else, right? But in general, for us for the ones that, you really have something, I would go online, read as much as you can about intellectual property in general in terms of the basics. And beyond that, get a lawyer on your team. It doesn't make sense to have a venture and you don't have any type of access to some attorney. So get a business attorney. There are all types of attorneys here. Generally, attorneys have a network of other attorneys that can kind of point you if you need something more specific. But that would be my recommendation. Just get an attorney on your team. The face of law has changed so much over the last 20 years that you can find an attorney that you feel comfortable with.
True indeed. At the very least, go out and get some type of counsel, get some direction. Pay the money, people. Pay the money. Or you're gonna pay later on, right?
Right.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming through and blessing us with your presence. It really was an honor, it was a privilege. And again, guys, go ahead and seek out the information that you are trying to get. Do it on your own, but don't rely solely upon yourself, guys. Go and get that expert help that you so dearly, desperately need, because it's going to be important for, not just you and your company's viability, but your own family, right? This is why we do this. We do this so that we can continue to support ourselves. And you heard it here first, from a historical perspective, how these things have changed and how they completely, for the better or not so much good, but this is incredible information that all of us are in this phase. But it's time to, if you're serious about it, right? If you want to go there, then go ahead and take those necessary steps, guys. So thank you.
All right, I got to run to 11 o'clock call, but I appreciate it. Any questions? Have folks send me an email or just go to my website, www.hcplaw.com, and you set up a consultation. I'd love to talk to you.
Thank you. Absolutely, brother.
Okay. Are you have a good one? Are you too?
All right, y'all. There you go. Hey, thank you guys for coming to this version of the Notary War Room. I'm your special guest host, Tech Amaku. You can follow me at Dr. Tech Music on Instagram. And I am out of here, you guys. Thank you guys for joining us. And make sure you catch the replay. Subscribe to the Notary War Room on YouTube. And you can find us on Instagram.